Hello, everyone. I'm really excited about this fantastic joint interview between Dylan and James. So Dylan is the CEO of Kylin Network, as you know probably, and James is the CEO of RioDeFi. And me, I'm Katrina. So I'm also from RioDeFi team. I'm really sorry for this awkward situation that I'm speaking from my car. But anyway, so let's start. Would you introduce yourself, please? Also talking about Kylie Network, Dylan first, and after that, I also would like to hear you, James, about RioDeFi as well, and how basically you came up to crypto.
Sure. So I started actually. James and I had a conversation a little bit ago about this. We actually have which is pretty interesting, and I'm sure he'll get into it after I speak. But we have pretty analogous backgrounds in crypto. So I don't know exactly when you got into it, James, but probably around the same time. So I think it was pretty early by most standards when I first heard about Bitcoin. I think it was like late 2010, and I read like this random like news aggregator article that someone had posted on this site. I think it was Metafilter, and yeah, I was just like, oh, this is really weird, and it's never gonna, and it's a little crazy, and it's never gonna work. And then a year later, I see another article about it, and that's when I started thinking like, okay, maybe there's something to this. And I took it upon myself to read the Bitcoin white paper, and in earnest started researching and getting into it. I was a little bit primed because I had a bit of an academic background in sociology, and I was like, as part of my thesis, I was investigating some interesting parts of, I guess, this burgeoning virtual world that was growing at the time, where you could, I was into these ideas of like in-game currencies, in-game real estate. I thought that was really interesting around that time, like EVE Online. And so I was sort of like primed for that. I was like, oh, well, gee, like a lot of people are going to be living their lives online. And if they're living their lives online, then, value is probably going to move there too. And we need a good way to do that. So that was sort of my really early story in it. And then later on, I got to know people in the Bitcoin and Ethereum circles here in Toronto. And that's probably where, I can segue over to James, because I believe you were also an early participant in Ethereum, or I guess one of the earliest you could be as part of their ICO.
Yeah. So it sounds like very similar to you, and got into Bitcoin. I think I heard of it either in 2011 or 2012, but certainly I started paying attention in 2012. And I was investing in gold and silver at the time, just using my savings from just standard, day jobs to purchase some silver. Followed the silver YouTubers a lot, and then some of them started talking about this thing called Bitcoin. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. And I remember reading an article. It was Trace Mayer. He's talked about, he had this blog, How to Vanish, and it was like how to go, purely anonymous and all this kind of stuff, and talking about this digital cash, and you can, like move money around the world like without censorship or anything like this. And I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. And at the time I was very concerned about the fiat monetary system and potential collapse, because I had lived through 2008 financial crisis, and as a business student in college, I was very well aware then of how this is impacting financial markets and how this could impact banks and inflation and all these kinds of things. So I was really concerned about that, and so Bitcoin seemed like a great alternative currency. But it wasn't until 2013 when I attended this conference called PorcFest in New Hampshire, which was a freedom festival, that I really got my first experience with Bitcoin, because all these different food vendors there took Bitcoin as payment. Some of them even said no fiat currency, or like no, this kind of thing, no USD, only Bitcoin. And so it's like, what the That's quite interesting. And so I ended up purchasing my first Bitcoin with cash from someone there. And so that was quite exciting. And Vitalik Buterin actually gave a talk there about Ethereum. Well, he didn't call it that at the time, but he talked about smart contracts and decentralized finance and how everything could eventually be automated through, if-then statements, computer code, and how it could get rid of some of the banking intermediaries and lawyers and different things. I was like, oh, this is like very interesting. And so it just got my attention, and I ended up picking up a Bitcoin magazine off of him because I think he was working for Bitcoin magazine at the time. And it's like, this is, really cool. And I got to meet Eric Voorhees, who at the time I think was working with Satoshi or running Satoshi Dice, and prior to all his other great ventures. So it was really cool to kind of be there early on. And then, yeah, my friend, I bought some Bitcoin off him to invest in Ethereum. And so it ended up working really well, and then invested in a lot of different or purchased tokens in a lot of different ICO projects between 2016 to 20, well, I still purchase today, so until 2020, but yeah, we were talking earlier, I guess we both invested in the original, the DAO. So it's kind of crazy how the space has evolved so much since then. Smart contract risk obviously is very much more well known than it was at that time. Of course, it's still, hacks still happen in the space and these kinds of things, but at the time there was like no security auditing firms or very few, and it was just a very new space. And so it's evolved and matured so much in these past 4 years since that time in 2016. And Ethereum went from $20 down to 10, and now it's, I think today it was over 600, or I don't know, it's pretty high. And then obviously Polkadot network rose from 2017 now to they raised I think 140 million, and now it's 2020, and the price of DOT, the total market cap is around 6 billion. So Bitcoin's at 19,000 at the time of this recording, or above 19,000. So it's such a wild world in crypto. What are your thoughts, Dylan, on this like overall growth of the ecosystem, and especially Polkadot, since we're both building on Substrate? Maybe we can jump into that a little bit.
So for us, we felt that was the possibility of a robust data marketplace, and for Kylin, and I guess you guys have chosen to build on Polkadot for similar reasons, to have just a more robust infrastructure that you feel, at least for your solution, to build on. That's the basics of it for us, why we've chosen Polkadot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cross-chain DeFi services for us, some people are calling it CrossFi now. I think it's really a huge evolution in the space, and I think it's where we'll see the market grow to new heights over the coming years, because each blockchain has something unique to offer, or at least many blockchains do. And so I think what Polkadot and these cross-chain bridges will enable is the ability to leverage each blockchain for its strengths, right? And leverage those networks and those communities that have been built up over the years, because even if a blockchain project has had to pivot, or whatever, the original plan might be different compared to 2017 or this kind of thing. I think there's a lot of value in those ecosystems and those communities, which can be revitalized with especially decentralized finance, and then having that go across chains. But that requires this kind of cross-chain messaging, and with one of the reasons we're so excited about Kylin Network, or Kylin, which you can find at Kylin.network, is the is the ability to have this data marketplace, and to get sources of data, as well as data analytics and tools to analyze these things. Because if you can see what's happening on various chains, and you can actually have that data imported onto your blockchain, then that really enables a lot of unique functionality, especially for finance, We were talking, Dylan and I, before this call, just about some of these open banking APIs, especially in Europe, and what they're doing with credit scoring information, and how new insights can be found, especially for things like insurance and credit lending programs and things like this. So we're really excited to explore how we can utilize Kylin's tools for data analytics, especially, and this data feed marketplace to really enable not just our own financial applications, which we'll be building, up over the coming months, but as well for people building on top of RioChain with apps like MantraDAO, being able to have these cross-chain DeFi services, and with them having a karma score, there will probably be some interesting synergies as well with them utilizing some of the tools that Kylin has provided via RioChain. So this is something we're super eager to continue to explore, and one of the reasons we embarked on this partnership.
Would you please, Dylan, tell us a little bit about Kylin Network? I mean, the main concept of it, so people would understand what the project about, and why why we choose to partner with you, why we choose you as one of the greatest projects among others to partner with.
I mean, it made sense for us to partner up with you guys because we're both extremely bullish on the Polkadot ecosystem. We both accept the basic thesis that it's going to be a multi-chain world, and because of that, you want to be where all the traffic is going to be happening, right? You want to be at the meeting point. If you accept that it's going to be a multi-chain world, you want to be where everybody's meeting up. And to me, and I think you agree with this, James, that seems to be Polkadot. So, I think we're very much riding. I mean, yeah, I want to be respectful of Polkadot, and we're riding on the shoulders of giants in terms of all the development work that they have done in the past 2 years. There are a lot of developers slogging it out to create a great great network and a great system that we can build on, and it allows. And just to get to the point of what Kylin does, so we started iterating, trying to solve this idea of the Oracle problem. The Oracle problem is really just down to its basics. How do you get there's a lot of information that happens in the real world that is extremely impactful for information or value that exchanges on the blockchain, right? So for example, if you need to find out the price of if you're just looking at a very simple example of, say, arbitrage, you need to know what a spot price of an asset pair is, and if you don't have a good sense of that, or something that you can trust and is validated, everything kind of flows from that real world, if you will, price. So you would be extremely, I don't want to use a vernacular, screwed if you had the wrong starting information there, right? If you're saying that the price is 20 and it's in fact 18, that's going to have a huge cascading effect down the line that's going to hurt many people. So validated information is extremely important. Getting information onto a blockchain from the world is extremely important, and in fact is one of the fundamental problems that needs to be solved. One of the fundamental things in blockchain, in addition to all these other fundamental problems, like commonly called the trilemma, scalability.
Yeah, so this idea, right, that the scalability, of these large payment processing networks is there, but they're very centralized, and so that's how they're able to keep it more efficient, you could say, because there's only they control the servers, and they can ensure that all of them are operating using the same database, the same infrastructure, and but they're maybe not as they're not as decentralized in the sense of the parties who are interacting with them. From the actual, like with blockchains, you have nodes, right, that are hosting this data from various types of computing systems across the world. And then of course you have the security. So, this, the ability to make sure the transaction data is robust and that it is not being tampered with, certainly from hackers and such. So obviously Visa and MasterCard have developed very strong systems for that. Blockchain networks as well address it through the consensus model usually. So proof of work, and then of course now proof of stake and nominated proof of stake with Polkadot. So we're very excited to address these issues. We think nominated proof of stake is a good model for kind of resolving this trilemma, because then you can have, for instance, maybe starting with federated networks, starting with a few validators, which is the approach RioChain is also taking, and then opening up to additional validators over time, making sure those nodes are economically incentivized to have the same incentives basically to secure the network rather than attack the network. And so you have things like slashing that come online with if a nominator's network doesn't have enough uptime and that they're not processing transactions, then that lowers the efficiency of the network. So of course you want to then penalize that validator so that they're not just wasting the network's resources and slowing down transaction finalization. And so this nominated proof of stake incentivizes the correct actions by the correct validator. So we're super excited by the system. There are other blockchains, delegated proof of stake, quite similar, but we think the way Polkadot addresses it, especially with the staking reward system, and they just put clearly a lot of thought into it and tried to find the most efficient route. And I mean, they're saying maybe in a year or two, probably that time frame, they could potentially even scale to 100,000 plus transactions per second, which would then even be faster than Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah, and that's extremely exciting. And to riff off of that, so for us, we felt that the sufficient conditions to solve the Oracle problem, getting just this idea of throughput, right? Throughput's really tough when you have a sequential chain, right, in terms of cost. And so this idea of getting like real-time validated information en masse, not just relegated perhaps to price feeds, but starting to get into all sorts of different data feeding, right? Whether it's from the blockchain world, or whether it's from banking finance world, or whether it's from a flight company that's delivering us whether we're getting data feeding from flight companies saying when the flights are getting in and out, and we're doing flight insurance. So that kind of throughput necessitates something like Polkadot. So the sufficient condition to solve the Oracle problem was not present, in our opinion, until recently. And that's what we're working on with that side of things. But that's not where our vision stops. We're much more invested. From our standpoint, we feel like the Oracle problem with Polkadot in the mix is kind of, for us, is like the low-hanging fruit. The grander vision is to drive a data marketplace and data analytics over time to deliver something that we call data 3.0 or data economy 3.0, where it's more of this P2P situation between actors, rather than it's going through all this information on people. It's going through this funnel of like centralized companies like Google, Facebook, etc. That's more interesting to us, and that's sort of the long-term vision.
But it's true. It's actually exciting to see our generation having this kind of passion. And I think obviously in tough times like now with COVID, and obviously the global economy's kind of in a wreck in most places, it's good to have some hope and positivity. And that's one of the things that I definitely look for in business partners like Katarina, as well as partnerships like with Dylan and Kylin. And so super grateful to have you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that I think we're gonna look, I hope, and I think that we're gonna look back, 2022 or 2023, we're gonna look back and we're gonna, especially people from this community, specifically like a blockchain community, we're gonna look back and say, wow, like during this time of great upheaval, a lot of question marks, asterisks, and anxieties, there were all these people that were, in their basements, in their, like under their son's bunk bed, that were busy building, infrastructure for a financial world that was a much fairer, became a much fairer vision than what preceded it. And, I hope lays the groundwork for a more stable, a fairer, and a more, I guess, equilibrated, making up a word.
Yeah.
World where, some people say, hey, crypto, like at the end of the day, it's like only gonna shave 5 points off of, XYZ situation for the common person if they're dealing in crypto versus, whatever else. But even so, that 5 points for a person who doesn't have a lot is an extreme, like that makes a huge difference for people. And sorry, I'm being like sort of oddly vaguely specific about points, but I think that the idea is, okay, well, even if because I hope we're not going over time, but I also don't like this idea that like blockchain is some panacea that's gonna, like, every time there's a bull run, it's like blockchain will, solve like seals dying in, the Arctic. Like,
yeah.
No, it's not going to do that. So, but I want to temper that. I guess like my perspective is like, even if the effect is like, just a few percentage effects, we'll say, toward a better world, I mean, wouldn't that be worth it? I think absolutely. So I don't think so. Yeah, just as a rejoinder to your dreaming millennials, well, yeah, hell yeah. I mean, of course, let's do it. Like, even it's actually a relatively practical dream. So
I mean, it's like, what does 2% GDP do when compounded over 100 years of GDP growth, right? That's how you get, this huge, massive growth of an entire nation, right? And so what if we can shift finances so that it's like, instead of 0 to 1% interest, we go back to 5 to 10% interest or more, based on sustainable things, real productivity, real efficient use of capital, and, peer-to-peer savings and lending, these kinds of things. It's absolutely massive when you take it over a lifetime. It can replace the need for government retirement programs. I mean, obviously those can be beneficial for a lot of people, but a lot of them are nearing bankruptcy, especially in the US. And so, how do we address these problems? Well, I think, if you add 5 percentage points year over year, that's absolutely massive. And it's going, you're shifting the funds, and instead of having these huge bonus packages for really wealthy investment bankers, you can actually, shift some of that to the people, the salt of the earth people, as we talked about before, saving and trying to provide a better life for themselves and their family. And so, being able to increase savings rates is a key focus of RioDeFi, and it's something that data is absolutely critical for. And so, that's why the data analytics tools with Kylin, we're super excited to onboard, because this kind of knowledge is what's needed to increase the efficiency of the system, which then can create money working for you, rather than being siphoned off by central bankers and their cronies and these kind of things.
In the line, basically, I would like to go to the community questions, and the first one is going to be from our community, from RioDeFi community. And this question is from Demis Dilshan, 17. So the question is, what is the vision behind RioDeFi and Kylin Network? And where do you see the projects in the next 2 years in the crypto industry?
Yeah, great question. So from RioDeFi perspective, our vision is a world in which everyone has access to DeFi services. We do this by connecting blockchain systems with financial institutions and helping to create the on and off ramps from fiat currency to cryptocurrency and then back again. So people can use their cryptocurrency in the real world to spend, right? Because a lot of payment processors don't accept Bitcoin yet, but they do accept fiat currency. So if you can have, debit cards, credit cards, these kinds of things, utilizing crypto assets, that's very valuable. And so our mission is to accelerate the mass adoption of digital assets by bridging the gap between traditional and decentralized finance. So that means by building these bridges, we're not saying one system is necessarily better than the other. We're just saying, look, there's alternatives to the traditional financial system. It has a lot of lessons, to teach us. It's done a lot to improve the world. But now there's these other systems that can also improve things like savings, improve lending, and you can kind of switch ideally seamlessly between them. Buckminster Fuller had a quote about, don't just tack the existing system, create a new system in its place that is better. I mean, I'm totally botching the quote, but it's something like this, right? And so we think that is what's needed to take blockchains to the next level. So over the next 2 years, we are looking to create more and more of these bridges between cryptocurrencies and traditional finance. And it doesn't stop just at cryptocurrencies, it's all sorts of digital assets. So we see the tokenization of all types of things. So, this gets into things like NFTs, this gets into things like, real estate assets and other things coming onto blockchain and how you can leverage those with DeFi protocols. So we have a lot of, interesting projects that are looking to build within the RioDeFi ecosystem. And so our goal is to facilitate those projects to best be able to, interact with a layer one blockchain that is fast, scalable, and interoperable with other chains.
I think like in 2 years, 2 years is a long time in crypto. It's an eternity in crypto. So hopefully no strange thing happens that no one could have foreseen. But even if it does, I feel like we're working on data infrastructure. I think that makes us relatively general enough that we can probably incorporate any crazy thing that happens in the future, because data infrastructure is needed, especially validated data infrastructure is needed by so many different industries. Whether it's I'd like to think that we're a little bit, to some extent, I expect that we will be cushioned from the vagaries and velocity and volatility of crypto. I hope in the long term, because we're going to be providing kind of more of a diverse set of solutions, similar to you guys, where you're into this fiat to crypto on-ramping, providing a financial service. I think that kind of cushions you guys as well as time goes on, because I think we should all be honest that we're still relatively early days, and still it's volatile. So we have to be careful with the amount of resources that we've gotten from investors, and our roadmaps, and being smart about how we spend our time and our resources. I do expect, and my job is, chief effort officer, I like to call myself, is try to work harder than everybody on the team. I don't always achieve it, but if we do that, it's really more of a marathon than a sprint, and it's just day in, day out, getting our partnerships lined up. I'm glad that we're out of our funding phase, because now I can spend more time studying and researching. I need to know more, frankly. I need to be, smarter, so that I can see things that, I may not see it at this moment. But for our project, I think that, I'd love to see us having, and I think that we will achieve, having a very robust data marketplace, starting in 2 years, I'd say we're at least 8 months into analytics, being like really robust and working for everybody and working well. And certainly in the next 6 months, our Oracle services are going to be coming online. That's very low hanging fruit for us. And yeah, I mean, some interesting sort of like thought experiments about this. And I don't want to go on too long, but recently I was asked about like election stuff. Could you validate elections? The answer is yes and no. You can't. We really can't validate. Like voting on the blockchain is actually a terrible idea. But what we can do, is sort of validate election results. I think that that's a possibility that's really interesting. That goes beyond, finance. It's got a value. I mean, it's hard to assign a value to validating election results. So I hope, in a few years from now, that could some developer comes on and wants to set up a data feeding service of like thousands of APIs of like local election results, and sets that up to provide to a centralized news source, and that's worth a lot of money probably to these centralized news sources, and KYL is driving that. I think that's really interesting. So yeah, that's kind of like specific and general from our and personal maybe.
That's cool. That's really cool. And following your answer, basically, I have a really fantastic question from your community, and it is from Kirthiran Snake 5. So part of it you answered already. What are your most important next priorities until the end of 2020? And are the fundamental tools sufficient to achieve these goals?
So priorities before the end of 2020 is happening incredibly rapidly. So we are definitely gunning for our TGE, hopefully before the end of the year. It's a little bit of a moving target. So that's something that's definitely on the forefront for us. But I mean, more of this. I think more of having frank discussions about educating our community, working on partnerships, knowing what we can actually do and what we can't. Those are all things that when you're in the beginning of a project that you need to understand pretty well. Like you need to actually know where you're at, and beyond the fluff, and so we're going to be doing a lot of more development work. Our development work on the Oracle side is pretty good. We're not too worried about that, but we're going to be doing a lot more development work on the data marketplace, data analytics side. We're going to be hiring. We're going to be hiring more human capital. We're going to be doing a lot more sort of like PR. I'm going to be more in front, talking a lot more, and engaging with our community. But yeah, that's like the next 45 days, so it's really not a lot of time, right? So pretty much what I'm doing now, coming off of our funding. That's what we'll be up to.
Well, 45
days.
Did
I answer the question fully? I don't know if I did.
Yes, I guess so.
Okay.
And just the last part was like, what about like fundamental tools that you have now? Is it sufficient for you now or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are. I think the off-chain worker functionality is definitely we're ready to go on that, and we've gotten great support from Web3 in terms of developing on off-chain workers. And what we've done essentially is provided an extensibility of the capabilities of off-chain workers for people building. So I think that's really interesting because we extend the capabilities of off-chain workers, and off-chain workers are defaulted for anybody basically on Substrate 2.0. We're extending the capability of everyone. So I think that's why when it comes to getting advanced data feeding services onto Polkadot. So I think that's why we've gotten a lot of support and encouragement from Web3, and I think that's frankly it's low hanging fruit for us. Like it's not hard to get APIs onto on chain, especially with off chain workers. But since we're making it much easier, I think that's a very concrete, achievable goal before the end of the year. I'll be frank, we hit a little bit of a snag with respect to like this ink situation. But Parity is working with us on it, and we're working through the substrate builders program. It's more on their side that they've got to clear up. But as soon as that's done, it's like turnkey. We're going to be ready to rock with that. That should be less than a month, about 20 days.
That's cool. That's cool.
So POC essentially before the end of the year is what we're looking at. Hopefully, like at least a test net.
Really soon. That's great. And James, would you like to share with us what about RioDeFi? What kind of priorities we have till the end of 2020, and do we have fundamental tools for that?
We've increased our capacity from about 17 people to now 36 people working on RioDeFi full time. So, it's been quite a lot with hiring new people, getting those people up to speed, trained, making sure they're the right fit, and that they're good, especially for the developers, that they have the correct understanding of Polkadot, Rust, blockchains. That's hard to come by, and so we've been quite fortunate to have found some very good development, developers, front end, back end, full stack, DevOps, everything to really take this to the next level. And so by the end of the year, the plan is to enable our generic asset bridge for RioChain to have the ability to swap from, for instance, Bitcoin, Ethereum, ERC20 tokens such as USDT, RFuel, and the Ohm token onto RioChain mainnet, the RST88 versions of those tokens. And so that uses, for our system, it uses a custodial bridge. So with our partner Hex Trust, we are providing this cross-chain solution until such time as there are decentralized options available, which we're super excited for projects like, for instance, Polka BTC, which is by Interlay on the Polkadot network, to have a truly decentralized cross-chain Bitcoin versus, for wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum is custodial. I'm not sure if everyone knows that, but, basically most of the cross-chain bridges are at this point. And so, we're also doing that in order to enable this functionality in the early stages, but we're super excited for these other ones. Anyway, by the end of the year, so that as well as we'll have, the plan is to have the staking of RFuel natively in Rio Wallet. So right now it's the beta version of Rio Wallet that's live, and people have, we've had actually over 6,000 people create wallets for for Rio Wallet. And then, so as we move to from the beta version to like V1 of Rio Wallet, increasing the functionality, having the staking, having the cross-chain swaps, this is what we're hoping to do by the end of this year. We've also been working on our mobile application. So I think we'll at least have some demo or at least some screenshots we can share with people by the end of the year. But we do want to make sure that the new functionality is fully integrated before going live publicly. So that might be a little bit later. But yeah. Let's
move into the next question. The next question is from Kylin community, and it's from it's much easier. The Crypto Voice. So the question is, it has been said that particularly the data analysis tools of Kylin Network will be used by RioDeFi official. What would be the utility of Kylin in this case?
So the utility would be that to work that operation, they would need KYL to basically drive that and fuel that. And that's really the simple answer.
Then let's move to the question from our community, from Dodge Time. Are there any limits to the development of RFuel and Kylin?
There's kind of like three major buckets for us, right? Which is the Oracle, the marketplace, and the analytics. So yeah, I would say, I don't know if we're limited. It's the best way to put it, but yeah, we're not venturing out into other things outside of this idea that we are forming a narrative of data 3.0 or data infrastructure for validated data infrastructure for blockchain. We're limited by those basic parameters. I think that gets to the spirit of it.
And the next question is from Kylin community, and it's from Bull Sender, and it is.
Oh, I know him.
Okay. Well,
I know who he is. Probably. He's a very active member of our community, but he's got a good question, I'm sure.
Well, probably he hasn't had an answer yet for this question. That's why he is asking it here. So, are both Kylin and RioDeFi aiming to secure a Parachain? And if so, for what time frame? Well, Parachain is like a hot topic nowadays, especially with lots of DeFi projects who are aiming to get it. And I definitely agree with Pulse, and I would probably ask the same if I would be, like from any community.
Yeah. A lot of different areas to parachains. To answer the question, if they have some familiarity with parachains and how they operate, absolutely, yes. We are looking to get parachain status, and I am pretty certain that you guys are too.
Yeah,
and I assume you share the same reasons for that strategy, which is that parachains typically are given over to more infrastructural components of the Polkadot ecosystem that require high throughput, lots of people using it, so that the idea of like the ancillary to a parachain is like a parathread, right? Which is more of like a pay-as-you-go model. So if you're gonna operate like what you think is going to be an infrastructural type of business, you're not gonna do a pop-up shop. You're gonna probably want to put down roots, and that's kind of like a weird analogy for parachains, but you essentially want to be able to stand on your own 2 feet, and that's what you would get with parachain status. You don't own these parachains in the sense that like once we have a parachain, we can have it forever. You have to lease them, so it's a very much a community effort to get it, I think, and we'll be doing an IPO. I don't know if you guys are as well.
Yep.
But I assume so. But yeah.
Any time frame
for Parachain? It doesn't depend. It doesn't depend on us alone, right? Like we have to look to the development of Polkadot to some extent for that. So we don't know. If I had to guess, I'm thinking. Actually, I'm not even gonna guess.
We've been contacted by someone there about our interest in becoming a parachain, and they've given us some resources about the parachain auctions and this kind of thing. So it seems like they're gearing up for it. I don't know the exact time frame, of course. I think it's a moving target because it's still under development and everything else. I think they, of course, also need the communities to familiarize themselves with everything. And there's a lot of, as Dylan mentioned, economic implications. I think at first it's going to be like one slot, probably the first auction, and then I think they want to target 3 pretty rapidly, and then eventually they want to expand to like maybe around 100, and then maybe eventually more than that. I think they mentioned, is it 1,000 at some point? But in any case,
I think they're actually I think they're capped. I think they're capped. Like they capped like. Well, because of just because of technical, like some of the technical requirements of the network, they have to cap it at like, they thought it could be 100. Then it was, you're probably thinking about when they're like, recently they're like, we could probably go up to 200 or something like that. But they're also reserving parachains for themselves in the sense for like infrastructural components of Polkadot. if that makes sense.
If you have the Parachain and if you're sending the data up to the Polkadot network, it's a shared security layer. And so that, backup of the data and that ability to maintain more security through Polkadot is one of the innovations of the Polkadot network that I think is really valuable for ecosystems that are developing. And so we'll also be looking at Kusama as a parachain for that, in addition to Polkadot, because it could be an option as well, to support both networks, but because we also hold a little bit of KSM as well. But it's a way to be a bridge to both, because certainly for various cross-chain applications as well, like it'll be interesting to see, some new projects in the coming years might start on Kusama and then move to Polkadot, and then so it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. But we certainly are targeting to become a Polkadot and a Kusama parachain. So
yeah, cool. That's great. And actually, great discussion of a Parachain, because it's really like one of the top topics, as I mentioned earlier. And lots of people, they were just like keeping asking, like, oh, are you going for Parachain? Like, are you going to be to become one of the Parachain? When? And I have so many questions about it, especially from people who invested, and especially from people who would like to invest, although we already listed, but anyway, lots of people are interested.
Yeah, and one quick point on that, people have said, oh, are you going to use your own money? How's it going to work? I mean, certainly some of the funds can be utilized for that, but same with Dylan, we're going to be doing an IPO or an initial parachain offering to raise the funding that'll likely be needed for that, because right now it's just estimates as to how much it might cost, but it's an auction, so it's going to go to the highest bidder, right? And it's going to depend on the various communities and their strength. And so I think it would be actually a poor use of investor funds if we spent all the funds that we're going to use to develop RioDeFi on just getting a parachain, right? That's why you need to get DOT from from your community and from outside, not just rely on the company's resources or something like that.
So it speaks to your communities. Is actually very synergetic. How IPOs work, how the whole parachain auctions and everything work. It's actually, I think it's really cool. So I don't know. Yeah.
Guys, that's it with the questions. For the moment,
awesome.
Things that's it. So I would like to thank both of you for this fantastic joint interview, and
thank you for moderating
your time. And basically, I really appreciate that today somehow we connected Toronto and Hong Kong, and also Europe. Talking to myself.
Yeah, no, totally. So
I just would like to wish good luck to all of us, to Kylin Network and to RioDeFi.
Thanks, and likewise.
For successful collaboration as well, and also for our further development of the projects, to make it not just one-day project, one-year project, but to make it long-lasting project that is really worthy. So,
agreed, 100%. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Katerina, and thank you, Dylan, as well. It's been a pleasure.